Welcome and thanks for being here. Today we're evaluating the two most widely used standardized college entrance exams given in the United States, the SAT and the ACT. Now, nearly all colleges and universities require at least one of these as a requisite for college admission. So we'll be examining the similarities and the differences between the two tests, particularly in terms of their structure, their scoring parameters, and some other key differences. So we'll begin with an overview first. Now, the use and the popularity of each exam is generally divided in the United States between the coastal states on both coasts and the rest of the country. In fact, as indicated by the graphic image, with the exceptions of Texas and Indiana, there's a nearly perfect division along these lines. Now, these lines are beginning to blur with the advancement of the SAT into the heartland and the advancement of the ACT into coastal states. But both exams remain very viable, and most colleges now look at either or both. Okay, so let's examine the similarities and differences between structure scoring and some other key differences between these exams. Let's begin with one key difference. If you had to identify one overarching difference between these exams, it's that the SAT tests for a student's scholastic aptitude, whereas the ACT tests for students' academic achievements. Now, by aptitude, we mean innate ability to solve problems given a set of facts. And by academic achievement, that's a sort of accumulation of knowledge. So a good example of this would be, for example, in the SAT, formulas are given in the math section, whereas on the ACT, formulas are not given. You're expected to know the formulas. Structural differences. The SAT has these three components: math, critical reading, and writing. And the ACT has these five: English, math, reading, science, and writing. Now, the writing section of the SAT is mandatory, whereas it is voluntary on the ACT. The SAT is going to change this in the spring of 2016. Beginning in March of 2016, the writing section of the SAT will also be voluntary. Now, you'll notice one key difference here is the ACT has a science section and the SAT does not. The science section tests on what's known as STEM topics, or STEM questions, and those include these: science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, although we've pointed out that the ACT does test the student's knowledge base, the science section of the ACT does not test specific science knowledge. Instead, it presents scientific information, usually in the form of graphs or charts or hypothetical summaries, and then it tests reading and reasoning skills based on a given set of facts. So, no prior specific scientific knowledge is required. And again, these topics are STEM questions: science, technology, engineering, and math. And the science questions focus on biology, chemistry, physics, and earth sciences. You definitely want to do your best to prepare for either of these exams, because if you score in the approximate top 10%, you can expect offers of up to $20,000 per academic year in the form of merit scholarships from a lot of great schools. So here's the general breakout of how each exam is structured, with timed sections and the number of questions for each. And one thing that really jumps out is you'll notice the ACT has undivided timed sections for each subject. All right, so you can achieve a perfect score with 800 points in each of the three sections of the SAT, or with 36 points in each of the four mandatory sections of the ACT. The composite ACT score is the average of these four scores. Now, if a student completes a voluntary essay in the writing section of the ACT, then ACT computes a combined English/writing score, which is reported on a scale from 1 to 36. So possible perfect score in the SAT is 2,400, and a possible perfect score in the ACT would be 36. For correct answers, both exams award 1 point, And for incorrect answers, the SAT subtracts 1/4 of a point for multiple choice questions only, and the ACT does not penalize for any incorrect answers. SAT Math tests for these skills: arithmetic, data analysis, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, functions, and geometry. The same math skills are tested on the ACT with the addition of trigonometry. Now, another key difference between the SAT and the ACT is that questions on the SAT tend to be a little trickier. SAT questions are often less straightforward and they might require some deciphering, whereas on the ACT, questions are generally very straightforward. So the SAT tests vocabulary skills more than the ACT does. The popular view, the general rule of thumb, is that the SAT rewards right brain dominant students who are strong in the humanities or in vocabulary and grammar and all the language skills, while the ACT rewards left brain dominant students who are stronger in mathematics and linear thinking. But you don't want to place too much emphasis on this because both hemispheres contribute to both kinds of processes, and regardless of brain function lateralization, both exams test heavily on general reasoning skills. So the SAT has 170 questions plus the required essay with an actual test time of 3 hours and 20 minutes, whereas the ACT has 215 questions plus an optional essay with an actual test time of 3 hours and 25 minutes. Now, the essay questions are very different on the SAT and the ACT. The SAT essay prompt is always very general in nature. They ask broad questions, often on broad and philosophical topics such as the nature of man's freedom, and that sort of thing. Now, students are best prepared when they can draw from history or literature or even personal experiences, as long as they provide a cogent answer. Also, SAT essay questions tend to be non-controversial. Conversely, the ACT essay prompt is more specific and potentially more controversial, calling upon the student's ability to argue or counter-argue on some topical issue. In either case, students must make a clear and logical argument while demonstrating effective writing skills in direct response to the prompt. Okay, this is showing the schedule of when the test is offered. The SAT is offered 7 times a year, and the ACT is offered 6 times a year. Now, the registration deadline for the SAT is typically 4 weeks before the test date, and ACT registration deadline is typically 6 weeks before the test date. And finally, the SAT is owned by the College Board, which was founded in 1901. The ACT is owned by ACT Incorporated, which was founded in 1959. So that concludes the examination of the differences between the SAT and the ACT. Thank you for joining us.